Oscar Wilde was born in Dublin in 1854 into an intellectually stimulated environment. His father was a renowned surgeon and his mother was a poet and journalist. This early exposure to literature and unconventional thought likely embraced his creative spirit. It was at Oxford that Wilde became deeply involved in the aesthetic movement, which highlighted art for art's sake. Yes, the theme we already talked about in class, emphasizing beauty and aesthetic values over moral and social concerns. This philosophy became central to his life and work. Wilde cultivated a flamboyant and witty public persona, becoming a celebrated figure in London society. He was, in a sense, famous for being famous. His literary output was diverse, including poetry, essays, plays, and one novel, his only novel, The Picture of Dorian Gray. Published in 1891, is a direct reflection of his aesthetic principles. The novel explores themes of beauty, the pursuit of pleasure, and the relationship between art and morality. The idea that art has no moral purpose is a key tenet of aestheticism that Wilde explores through the history of Dorian, ageless beauty, and the moral decay reflected in his portrait. The novel's homoerotic undertones also hinted at Wilde's own private life. Wilde's personal life took a dramatic turn with his affair with Lord Alfred Douglas, nicknamed Bossy, in 1891, in a society where homosexuality was illegal. This relationship led to his downfall. His unsuccessful libel suit against Bossy's father, the Marquis of Queensberry, resulted in Wilde's own arrest and conviction for gross indecency in 1895. The themes of duality, hidden sin, and the consequences of societal judgment present in The Picture of Dorian Gray resonate with the secrecy and potential for scandal that characterized Wilde's personal life. The novel's initially negative first action, with critics labeling as immoral, foreshadowed the moral condemnation Wilde himself will face. Therefore, understanding Wilde's commitment to aestheticism, his flamboyant public persona, masking a private life that transgressed Victorian norms, and the societal backlash he ultimately experienced provides crucial context for interpreting The Picture of Dorian Gray and appreciating Oscar Wilde's complex literary vision. Key moment. If I had to choose a key moment, a striking quote from The Picture of Dorian Gray, it would undoubtedly be the passage where Lord Henry Wotton spits his philosophical poison into a still innocent Dorian. More precisely, this sharp assertion, "There is no such thing as a good influence, Mr. Gray. All influence is immoral from a scientific point of view." This sentence, paradoxical at first glance, is the cornerstone of Dorian correction. It calls into question conventional notions of virtues and vice, opening the way to an uninhibited hedonistic exploration. Lord Henry goes on to idealize a life lived to a full, where every feeling finds its form and every thought its expression. He asserts that the fear of oneself is a tragic mutilation and that repressing one's impulses leads to inner poison. Moreover, he puts forward the seductive idea that the only way to get rid of a temptation is to yield to it. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends of the spoken word and the complexity of the human soul, good evening. Here am I again among you, carrying within me the echo of my own experiences, sometimes lived too intensely. I am Dorian Gray, and with me always resonates the penetrating spirit of my creator, Oscar Wilde, master of paradoxes and keen observer of his time. Tonight, our attention is drawn to another striking thought from the pages of The Picture of Dorian Gray. Let us listen to these words, spoken by the influential Lord Henry Wotton. And yet, I believe that if a man were to live his life fully and completely, if he were to give form to every feeling, expression to every thought, reality to every dream, I believe the world would gain such a fresh impulse of joy that we will forget all the maladies of the Middle Ages and return to the Hellenic ideal, to something finer, richer than the Hellenic ideal, perhaps. But the bravest man among us is afraid of himself. This quote from the mouth of Lord Henry, an emblematic figure of Wilde's aesthetic and hedonistic idea, contains a bold vision of existence and a scathing critique of human timidity and the face of one's own nature. Living life fully and completely, I've described here, implies a total absence of self-restriction and censorship. It involves giving substance to every emotion, expressing every thought, and fulfilling every aspiration, unfettered by social conventions, moral judgments, or internalized fears. Lord Henry idealizes a kind of return to a Hellenic ideal, an era perceived of value in beauty, individual fulfillment, and a certain freedom of expression. He even envisions the possibility of surpassing this ideal through even greater joy and wealth. However, the following statement casts a shadow over this optimism. Listen to his quote. "But the bravest man among us is afraid of himself." This quote reveals a profound distrust of the human capacity to embrace one's own existence without fear. It suggests that society, with its monstrous and unlawful laws, conditions us to repress our natural impulses, to psychologically mutilate ourselves through self-denial. According to Lord Henry, this fear of self is a tragic survival of the mutilation of the savage, and punishes us by allowing our repressed desires to simmer in the mind and poison us. These implications of this quote are considerable for our understanding of truth and pretense. Authenticity versus social performance. The quote contrasts a life lived on one's own terms, an inner truth made up of authentic feelings and thoughts, with the performance imposed by the fear of judgment. Society often pushes us to adopt masks to play roles that conform to expectation, distancing us from our true nature. Purification through action versus rumination. Lord Henry advances the idea that the body sins once and is done with its sins, for action is a mode of purification. He suggests that expression, even of impulses considered negative, can have a cathartic effect. Unlike resistance and repression, with breath, sickness of the soul, this challenges the idea that truth resides in apparent purity and highlights a possible liberating truth in experience, even transgressive experience. The role of the mind in the truth of sin. The quote emphasizes that the great events of the world take place in the brain. It is in the brain and the brain only that the great sins of the world also take place. This is particularly relevant to my story, Dorian Gray. My sins, although manifested in the portrait, first took root in my thoughts, desires, and choices. The real ugliness was not immediately visible, but it was deeply rooted in my mind. The portrait, by revealing this hidden truth, broke the illusion of my eternal purity. Fear as an obstacle to self-truth. Fear of our own desires, of our own thoughts, prevent us from living an authentic life. We refer this simulacrum of conformity to the potentially disturbing truth of our individuality. Lord Henry confronts us with this fundamental cowardice that distances us from the fresh joy and richness of existence that a fully lived life could bring. In the end, this quote invites us to a deep introspection. Do we dare to face the truth of our own desires and impulses? Or do we prefer to hide behind socially acceptable masks, living an existence watered down by fear? Wilde, through Lord Henry, seems to plead for a boldness of being, a fearless exploration of the deeps of oneself, even if it implies transgressing conventional limits, because perhaps the real tragedy does not lie in our actions, but in our refusals to live fully, in the fear of discovering the truth of who we really are. Thank you.